So just a quick show of hands, how many people actually understand Odia? Okay, so you know what this means. So for the ones among you who do not know what this means, it's roughly translated into and then what happened was. And the reason I'm showing this to you, I'll come back to later. So quick word about me. My name is Vijayendra Mohanty. I am working at a company called Culture Machine, where I run a YouTube channel called Epified, which shows mythology and history and culture related content with the help of animation. And so my designation at Culture Machine is story head, and there is more than one reason I'm probably deserve the word story head, because you know how there is dope head, story head is the same thing, except that instead of dope there is stories. When I was a child, my grandfather used to tell me stories during lunchtime because I could not eat without listening to a story. So most kids have bedtime stories. I had lunchtime stories. So yes, I chose stories over food. One thing that I could never really get my head around was that the stories that my grandfather told me never really started. They were always in the middle somewhere. So it was not like he started off with, once there was a king, this happened to him, this happened to him, this happened to him, and then the story ends. It was always somewhere in the middle. Like one day Shiva met Arjun, and I was too young to know who Shiva was or who Arjun was. One day a great big flood came and everyone died. What? And things like this. And these were stories from mythology, Mahabharata, Ramayana, etc. But eventually what happened was that in the long run, these various small stories started connecting inside my head. So even if he is telling me the story of Arjun fighting his cousins on the battlefield on one day, and the next day he's telling me the story of a young Arjun aiming at a bird's eye in a forest with his teacher, the child starts to connect dots. Oh, it is the same dude. And the more stories you hear about the same character, the more sense it starts to make, and a mythological universe starts forming inside your head. The reason this strange flow of storytelling was not confusing to me is because over a long period of time, when someone is immersed into mythology or any universe or any kind of narrative, the mind starts putting things together, and the traditional structure of beginning, middle and end does not seem to matter that much. And this was also the time when the B.R. Chopra's Mahabharata was on television, and I was kind of disappointed, frankly, because I had been told that there was going to be a war, and it was like 18 episodes of two dudes standing in the middle of a battlefield talking to each other. So we had no idea what was happening. Me and a lot of my friends were disappointed also. We had to come back to it eventually. Think of understanding mythology like this, a bit like learning your mother tongue. The standard way of learning a language is when you learn the grammar, learn the words, learn the meaning of words, learn how they're pronounced, and then you learn it. That did not happen with your mother tongue. You went straight to speaking it. You learned what words mean, and you said mama, you said papa, and before you knew it, you knew all of it. And by the time you actually went to learn how to write it and how to read the documents in this language, you already knew most of what it was. So this is learning through immersion. You don't come to it from outside. You materialize somewhere within the narrative, and the narrative starts making sense to you. What I did not realize at that point of time, and what it took me quite some time to realize, was that what my grandfather was doing to me was actually digital storytelling. We think of digital storytelling as storytelling with the help of digital media. Like you put up something on the web or on YouTube or on Facebook, and the stories you hear through that medium is digital storytelling. But it works on another level as well, and that is that stories can be broken down into smaller bits and given to you, so that you do not start at the beginning. You suddenly materialize inside a story, and the story is all around you. A good example of this can be an analog versus digital clock. So when you look at an analog clock, what you see is all the digits laid out in front of you from 1 to 12. So you know where it begins and where it ends. And if it's 3 o'clock, you can still tell that after some time it's going to be this 4, or it was 1 some time ago. So the entire narrative is in front of you. What the digital clock does is that it gives you only what is now, which is a chunk of the entire narrative, and it is all that it gives you. You do not get to know, like it's 9:52 here. You will not be able to see 9:50 or anything before that or anything after that also. You see what is right now. And that is what is essentially the difference between a digital way of telling a story and the analog way of telling a story. What we have, okay, I had another example. Suppose there is a documentary which is about 50 to 60 minutes long, and one way of watching it is by going to the beginning of the documentary and going to the end of the documentary and watching the whole thing. Another way of doing the same can be dividing the documentary into various smaller clips and then watching each of it individually, independently, and each clip makes sense by itself. And after you have watched all of these clips, the documentary's purpose is also revealed to you, even though you did not watch the documentary the same way that it was supposed to be watched. Similarly, a news report of about 100 words or 200 words can be divided into 10 or 20 tweets. One tweet can contain a stat, another tweet can contain a quote by a bystander, and this is actually a big part of how we consume news these days. We don't actually read the whole report. We find bits and bytes on Twitter and Facebook, and we put the bigger picture together. So that is digital storytelling. So the channel that I run, which is Epified, and it exists on YouTube and Facebook, has been trying to do something like this for about a period of 10 months. We started in April 2015, and it's January now. We have more than 40,000 subscribers on YouTube and more than 160,000 likes on Facebook. And it's a very dedicated community that we have built because of this, because instead of this being one big story, it's a story that is unfolding over time and people keep coming back to it. So as the story is being told, people are a part of it. And that is what keeps it going. And when I came back to digital storytelling and how mythology is often told digitally, I realized something else, is that since mythology is not one story, and before Ram there was Parshuram, and after Ram there was Krishna. So the Ramayana and the Mahabharata are linked in that way. It's the same characters playing two different roles. So mythology is actually not a line that has a beginning and an end, and it does not go straight to where it's supposed to go. It's actually a circle. So no matter where you choose to start the story, the whole mythic narrative, you will always find yourself in the middle, because there was something before it and there is something after it. And this is when I return to the point I made in the beginning. Seitu Kon Helana is how my grandfather used to start all his stories. And every time we went to him to ask him to tell us a story, this is how he would begin. And it was confusing at the beginning, but it got better over time. He passed away exactly 1 year ago. And you could say that that was the end of his story, but I like to think it was the middle. Thank you.